here for is to talk about how we do better. So I hope this will be an uplifting session. I think we're going to be really solutions focused, and I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to have my panelists introduce themselves in just a moment, and I'm actually going to go and sit down with them and have this as more of a conversation instead of a presentation style today. But I just wanted to say a little bit that it was great seeing all of the presentations this morning, and it really made me think about my life, being someone who grew up in the Huron River watershed, and how important the river has been to me as a place, as recreation. Some of my favorite memories. I don't know where Paul is, but I was sampling benthic macroinvertebrates with the Huron River Watershed Council in 1995 at Community High School. So environmental education works. Here I am. And I've also paddled the Huron River Water Trail twice. And so if anyone wants to talk about where to camp on the Huron River, I got you. Let's talk. This morning we talked a little bit about the challenges. We heard about development, climate, emerging contaminants, and our panel today has folks from state government and folks from local government who have tackled some of these challenges and are currently in the process of making those things work. One of the things that we really want to focus on is what we can do together. We find that the interaction between state and local, and yes, federal, is where the magic can happen, but it can be daunting. It's a little bit scary sometimes when you think about the fact that we have more than 1,000 different local governments in Michigan and one state, and that makes it hard for the local to push on the state because it seems so big. It makes it hard for the state to coordinate with locals because there are so many of them. And even within one watershed, we have all these different local units of government that have to work together in order to work for us. So we're going to explore some of those challenges today. We're going to hear a couple success stories, and then we'll have some time for audience questions. And I'd love for you to think about what opportunities you're hearing and what is exciting to you about things that you might be able to do in your own community. So we'll introduce our panelists now. Hello? There we go. Hey, switch blocking, we worked. All right, so I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves one at a time, and we are going to go in a different order than they're sitting in because that's what my notes say. So we'll actually start up at the headwaters of the Huron River. It's felt appropriate to go ahead and start with Tim Sikma. This morning we heard a little bit about the city of Wixom and some of the challenges that happened up there with PFAS and with Tribar and the contamination. And so Tim had to handle that. And so Tim, I'd love for you to kind of tell your side of that story and also focus maybe a little bit on how the state and what support you got from the state or how that worked together.
So yeah, Tim Sikma, City Wixom, DPW Director, and it started with PFAS in 2018 for me, and Teresa Seidel was the director at the Wastewater Administrator Conference, and she said that they were going to start investigating PFAS, and everybody there would need to sample the waters, and I thought, boy, this is a very aggressive program, and it's not going to work. And in July, we took a sample, and we were, I think, 290 parts per trillion. And then in August, we had a 4,900 parts per trillion with PFOA as the primary. And so, yeah, we were in the running. And the second in the state of having PFAS in the PFAS-laden solids and PFAS-laden effluent at the treatment plant. So we investigated it and found that it was primarily because of Tribar, which we talked about. And we worked a lot with the state over the past few years trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, because the treatment plant, as Stephanie had indicated, is not a producer of anything. We just receive water, wastewater, and we treat it and move it along. And similar to the solids in a landfill. And what we're doing now with our solids, although it has very little PFAS in it, we do haul it to a landfill, and that landfill has to have leachate, and leachate goes back through. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story. I can talk probably for hours on Tri-Bar itself, and trying to keep a company in Wixom that was discharging, unbeknownst to them initially, some hazardous waste.
So that ended up hitting the local, right, the DPW, having to handle all of the PFAS that was coming through. You were able to stop that, and I thought we saw some really remarkable results this morning, so thanks for that. We're going to introduce Katie Jones, my longtime friend in Ypsilanti, who is going to talk a little bit about the city of Ypsilanti. Katie works on a lot of things, including some of the site contamination that we saw earlier, but today I actually want to ask her about something else, which is that Ypsilanti is very close to finally removing the Peninsular Park Dam. So can you talk a bit about how we got there, and maybe, why that's a big deal?
Yeah, so I'm Katie Jones, City of Ypsilanti, and I'm the Community Economic Development and Equity Manager there. So those 3 words sometimes can get a little complicated, certainly, but I think that one of the biggest projects I've been working on since being at the City of Ypsi is removing the dam. So some of the stumbling blocks to getting there was fundraising. So I think we've been talking about this probably for 10, 15 years, something like 10 years maybe, and I think that getting there required doing a lot of fundraising efforts, and so that was what I was primarily helping with, was doing a whole bunch of grant writing and getting state and federal dollars to match up and to ensure that we had the financing to be able to even embark on the project. And so while we had done a ton of community engagement with the community and discussing about whether to remove the dam or not remove the dam and all those things that happened way before I got there, the next step was removing the dam and getting to the point where we had enough funds to be able to do the job.
And you have the funds now, right?
We do have the funds now, yes. And so now we're working with our engineering firm and getting to 60% designs and working on getting that done. And so we're looking at 2027, we'll actually start doing some of the removal.
So exciting. Thanks, Katie. All right, I'm going to go next to Mike at the end there. Mike is from the DNR, and I know one of the areas we also talked about this morning, especially in that economic development session, about the value of our drinking water. And so Mike works in forestry and works to protect our drinking water. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, you bet. I'm Mike Smulligan. I'm a forester with the Department of Natural Resources. And rather than working on public lands, I work with private landowners and natural resource professionals of all types, working with family forest landowners primarily. And we've got a project here in Michigan called Forest to My Faucet, which is showcasing connections between forests and drinking water. And the Huron River Watershed Council is one of those 20 partners that are reaching out to their local water utility and asking, how can we help implement your source water protection plan to protect your drinking water supply? And that's an interesting project because I don't know of any water utilities in Michigan that own the watershed that is the source of their drinking water. And and most of the watersheds are Great Lakes scale watersheds. So it's an interesting challenge, but we're focused on land use and the contribution of forests to protecting drinking water.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm remembering that we have some slides for you, so we're going to go back to that in a minute, but I'd love for Tom to introduce himself first. So Tom, I'm going to ask you to kind of tie it all together for us. Tom's from the governor's office, and I know that the governor's level, we've worked on emerging contaminants, worked on dam safety, worked on water infrastructure and some of those issues. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you see as some solutions from that end, and if there are any things that we can learn for the Huron watershed.
Yeah, sure. My wife is a musician, and she always criticizes, not in a loving way, of course, but like mic placement. So I'm going to try to do my best. Yeah, I see somebody else who also does music. So Tom Zimnicki, I'm the policy advisor in the executive office of the governor. I cover climate and environment, so basically anything outdoors or energy related falls into my immense portfolio of work. Speakers up here already hit on several high priority things. I mean, obviously, the state and the administration really led on PFAS identification, management of PFAS, when you look across the country, have done quite a bit of work and quite a bit of investment into dams and dam safety. I know the Peninsula Dam, part of that funding is coming from state funds. And I think dams are going to continue to be a high priority issue, not only for local governments, but really across the state. And so the department, EGLE, is working on and has been working on a package of dam safety legislation that really tries to address, right, some of the concerns and issues that folks have been bringing up for years. The other thing that I want to highlight, because there isn't as much of an ag focused, and Gillian and I talked about this a little bit, I think an interesting success story that has come about, so just south of here in the Western Basin, the state, in partnership with some private and nonprofit entities, launched a really immense water quality monitoring project in the headwaters of the Western Basin. And Ed from Limnotech is here, and he and I could talk at length about the project. But I think it's a really interesting example of the state understanding and identifying that there is this really complex, intractable problem around nutrient pollution, and the things that we have been doing for years have not yielded the success that maybe the government and certainly like locals would be looking for. And so how do we get better about targeting those resources? How do we get better about really maximizing the efficiency of what limited dollars we have? And so part of that in this case is getting a better understanding on the science and really what is happening in the water. And so I think it's an interesting example of how certainly the state and the administration has really over the years kind of adapted to meeting really complex issues as they come up.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going rogue here, folks. But I would love, Mike, for you to talk a bit, and I'm going to pull up if you can see your slides there. But got it? All right, we got it. I've got my slide of some of the land cover. I know that's a topic we talked about. Oh, we got one here. We talked about that topic a bit this morning, and I would just love for you to go a little bit into the land cover and how that impacts water quality.
Yeah, so we're supposed to be shifting gears this afternoon to some of the opportunities and the good stories. And I want to give some love and a shout out to Ann Arbor and the Ann Arbor Greenbelt and Bluebelt Initiative. That is a very innovative program here in Ann Arbor that I don't know of any other city or watershed anywhere else in the state is doing that. And that is essentially an example of a water fund, which is a type of payment for ecosystem services project where downstream beneficiaries are paying the upstream providers of higher quality water to the downstream users. And the reason why that's so essential here in Ann Arbor and the entire watershed, I'd like to show you two maps. People talked a little bit about land use this morning, but and Katie referred to herself as a data nerd. I love a good map, and I love good land use or land cover data. And so after lunch, if this was your glass and you had to dip it into one of the 5 Great Lakes and unfiltered and untreated, which Great Lake do you want to drink? That was pretty unanimous. And I asked this question all over the state to everything from garden clubs to logger training, and it's almost always universally Lake Superior. And I don't disagree with that. And if you take a look at this map of land cover of these 5 immense watersheds, Lake Superior is 91% forest and only 1% ag and 2% urban. Lake Huron, which is the source of drinking water for Detroit and 4 million other people that get their water from the Great Lakes Water Authority in southeast Michigan, is 67% forest in its watershed. And so Detroit really needs to thank Canada for retaining most of the forest cover on the north shore of Lake Huron. Lake Michigan and Lake Ontario, they're at a tipping point. And if you read EGLE's water quality data or the EPA's State of the Great Lakes reports, Both of those lakes are only in fair condition, and that's because they only have 50% forests in their watershed, and it's about a third ag and 10% or so urban. And then no one shouted Lake Erie. Where's some love for the home watershed, right? Here we are in the Lake Erie watershed. I need to lose some weight, so I want to drink some Lake Erie water. And Lake Erie is in tough shape in large part because of the massive land use changes that have happened over the last 200 years, where that western Lake Erie Basin, I believe, used to be called the Great Black Swamp, which was a pretty good place to bury a horse and buggy, and it's been drained and converted to agriculture. And look at the land use for Lake Erie, only 19% forest and 60% ag and almost 20% urban. And Gillian, if you could, move to the next slide. Here's why that Ann Arbor Greenbelt and Bluebelt initiative is so important. Because if you take a look at the land cover for the Huron River watershed, you folks don't have 90% forest cover like Lake Superior does. You don't have 67% forest cover like Lake Huron does. You're way below that tipping point of 50% forest cover. You only have 30% forest left in this watershed. You've got 40% urban land use. I was surprised that it was only 15% agriculture in the watershed. And then there's that always unsatisfying, open land use, which could be anything from a high quality rare savanna to more likely a golf course full of pesticides and not necessarily contributing to water quality. So if you take a look at the land cover data for the watershed, that Ann Arbor Greenbelt and Bluebelt initiative is incredibly important because the Lake Erie watershed can't afford to lose any more forests. And that watershed is, that initiative, the Ann Arbor Greenbelt and Bluebelt initiative, again, I don't know of any other city in Michigan that's doing that. So some of the good news for the Huron River watershed is that you're ahead of the game in terms of some of the solutions that you need to be implementing. And when that property tax millage comes up in the future, I hope it is renewed, and I hope that watershed, that water fund is invested in with other partners other than just local property taxes. And I hope that Ann Arbor expands the geographic scope of the Blue Belt, because if you looked at the map of the Blue Belt, it's the Huron River watershed upstream from Ann Arbor within Washtenaw County, which has some pretty blocky, straight political lines, and clearly the watershed extends, further up. So those are some of the good things that is happening here, that it really is unique and innovative, and it's a part of the solution that needs to be enhanced here and replicated elsewhere in the state.
Thanks so much. I love maps, so I really wanted to make sure we got to those. I'm actually going to send it back to Tim, who also had a little bit more in terms of visuals. And Tim, I think we transitioned out of this conversation on land use, but I'm guessing that land use and economic development, where we put the road and some of your industrial areas are things that you probably deal with a lot on the local level. So I'd love if you could, talk a little bit about, what you can go a little deeper into your, I took out the truck photos, but other than that, we were good. But if you want to go in a little bit deeper into your story and kind of how that ties into a solution that, that.
Yeah. So this is our water resource recovery facility. It's Wixom's. It's part of 360 acres of property that is close to the habitat. This is only the 40 acres of the complex for the treatment system as a whole. But then in the background of that, we also have, to the back of that plant, we have a compost facility. We have 12 acres of compost that South Oakland County utilizes for compost. And future goals for me is to, at some point in the future, utilize the biosolids from the treatment plant with the industry there, the compost. In the foreground, we also have RV storage, because most of the urban areas don't have parking. So we have quite a few of those for our community as well. But, very
Speaking of
inexpensive.
all the unanticipated issues that local governments deal with, RV parking.
RV parking is one of them, and storage. So it is not a campground. But as a biology, the treatment plant wasn't able to treat for PFAS. And in 2018, this is what we saw for areas in Michigan that had some kind of detection for PFAS. And when I found out that there was some PFAS that was in the glaciers, above, frozen in the middle of a glacier, I figured you could sample this anywhere and find PFAS. And looking at this sample, and then in 2025, this is how many samples that we found. And that's not because there's more contamination. That's because we sampled more places, right? And we found it in more places. And that reiterates the fact that we have it everywhere. It is forever. And we're trying to remove it. Now, the biosolids that we have at the treatment plant, we have what I'm calling legacy solids. There's about 1.5 million gallons that was left back from the 2018 problems. And another goal of ours is to have those removed and treated and have the fluorides removed from the carbons so that they go back to the inert processes. And I refer to this as the moon race. The best company excuse me, that is able to do that is going to make a lot of money and also help the environment at the same time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Needed to get back to our slides here. That's all. All right, I'm back on script. I would love to hear from each of you about some of the challenges. We've talked a little bit about the challenges, but I know we framed this morning some of the challenges with emerging contaminants, development, climate change. What are some of the things coming down the pike for your community, and what are some of the opportunities from where you sit that you would love to see us, we the Huron Watershed Council, or we the state of Michigan, or not Watershed Council, we the communities of the watershed, there we go, or the state of Michigan, what would you like to see us be pursuing when it comes to some of these things? What do you see as our big opportunities? I'll take a volunteer to start. It's you, Katie.
It's me. So I think that, again, the opportunity right now for us is that we got the funding, right? Like we were able to use state as well as federal funding and capitalize on that to be able to get another grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to finalize the funding that we needed for removal of the dam. But I think that one of the biggest benefits that we have from this team of folks that we get together and talk about what the next step is for removal, and when we're coming up with designs and plans and debating what the best methods are for everything, is the experts that we have at the state and federal level. We have a chance to get on the phone, and one of the beautiful things from a virtual world and that we learned through the pandemic was being able to all get on Zoom and have a quick conversation, and those are able to happen a lot more quickly and a lot more efficiently, I think, than they have in the past. And so that's a real benefit to us as locals, is to be able to say, I'm not really sure what we're supposed to do here, but we need to get the expertise in the room, and that's really, really helpful and something that we've been able to capitalize on.
Tim, we talked about one big problem you solved. Are there other opportunities you see on the horizon?
The other opportunities, getting with other communities, like you said, I think we're kind of the poster child as far as PFAS and how to find it and how to at least take it out of the waste stream at a pretreatment level. We worked with that company for several years, and in that process was able to figure out ways that they can still be profitable, and we can still get the environmental results that we needed from them as well. And there were other things that I think were missed initially with the PFAS. One of them was procedural. I wish we would have, thinking back on that situation, had more of a procedure in place for that industry, meaning that it was an opportunity after we solved the PFAS issues. Not long after that, we had one of their rogue employees be able to just mash the reset button on their pre-treatment process, 400 and some times in a night, and turned my world upside down again. So.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I do want to do a quick shout out before I go on to Tom that Wixom in a lot of ways was sort of the guinea pig of figuring out how we were going to handle PFAS pretreatment, some of the biosolids management at a local level. And so Tim's team had to go through a lot of that. Unfortunately, they didn't sign up for that, but that's what they got. But because of that, and I don't know if Stephanie Kammer is still here, but her team has just done, hi Stephanie, Stephanie's team has just done amazing work to figure out how to use NPDES, this federal program, to work with wastewater treatment plants to reduce PFAS. And when my boss goes out and talks to other states about that, we've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ontario's asking us questions. So these are things that our locals are figuring out that are now having impacts and being duplicated across the Great Lakes watershed. So it's also pretty exciting to see our own Huron River programs have that kind of impact.
Well, as a member of Michigan Water Environment Association, we meet quarterly with some of the staff, Stephanie included some at times, and we're able to talk about it just as trying to solve the problem, not looking at the regulation piece versus what needs to be done on those things. And yeah, EGLE had a very good listening ear, and I think we were able to structure something that works for every treatment plant here in Michigan.
Thanks, Tim. All right, I'm going to go to Tom to talk a bit about opportunities and challenges that you see coming down the pike.
Is Heather still here? I was talking to Heather at lunch. I told her I'd be positive, but Gillian asked for things that I'm also cautious about. Yeah, cautious about moving forward. So I think, no surprise to anybody in the room, the state of the federal government is interesting right now, and so there is, and the funding at the state level looks a lot different than it did during. I mean, COVID brought a lot of obviously terrible things. There was also a lot of stimulus money that came after that helped launch and really catalyze a number of programs. The funding, not just in Michigan, but across the country, looks a lot different now than it did 2, 3, 4 years ago. And so that, coupled with all of the federal uncertainty around budgets, being able to pass budget, and not just from an environmental standpoint, but all of these other programs that states rely on federal assistance and residents rely on federal assistance for, with those either paused or disappearing or in flux, what role the state has in making up for that budget-wise is certainly something that is going to continue to come up not only in Michigan but across the country. On an optimistic front, and what I'm hopeful for here, obviously PFAS again was and continues to be a huge issue, a tragedy for many. It has also, I think, given us the opportunity to kind of understand how to tackle emerging pollutants at the state level. And so post PFAS, right, we've seen investments both in EGLE and MDARD around emerging contaminants and emerging pollutants that go beyond PFAS. Microplastics continue to come up in not only the public, but also in policy conversations. And there will always be the next PFAS, there will always be the next microplastics. And so what I am optimistic about and what I think is presented to us now is kind of a structure for how we go about, whether that's testing, whether that's getting information out to the communities, whether that's getting labs up and running to be able to really understand what's going on. And so in that sense, I think Michigan is in a really unique spot compared to a lot of states that since we have gone through this. So.
Thanks so much. Mike, would you finish us up on what do you think are some big opportunities coming forward?
I guess one of the opportunities that I'm interested in is this concept of conservation finance. And how do we pay for good things? If it's not going to be the federal government, and if the state government doesn't have the funds to replace those funds, does the local government have that capacity? And if the answer to that is your third no, what's your fourth opportunity? How do we fund these types of things? And so, again, going back to that idea of a water fund, if we can find clear connections between the upstream providers of beneficiaries and the downstream, people that are benefiting from that, and find investment in that area. And I think that water in particular is a subject that illustrates that sometimes taxes are okay, like that Ann Arbor Greenbelt and Bluebelt initiative. That is a tax. The residents of Ann Arbor voted to tax themselves because they wanted to invest in land protection and water quality. Water also illustrates that sometimes regulations are a good thing. We all want to drink water that doesn't have PFAS or E. coli or any number of contaminants in it. And that happens because either the state or the federal government regulates water quality. So I think the story of water helps remind us that as a society, we need to decide what are things that are important to us, what is essential to life, what unites us across these crazy, divided political times to help solve some complex problems. And so I think I'm excited about, as a forester, my job is to manage forests. As a forester, I'm really excited about water because I think it helps remind all of us that nature is important and that government can be helpful sometimes and that taxes can be put to a good use. And so, and that the private sector has a role to play too. This conservation finance, we need to get the private sector, we need corporations to step up to the plate and not just greenwash their sins, but to actually make investments that make the world a better place, because we all benefit when we make the world a better place. And so I think there's great opportunities in that space. It's complex and it's messy. But as someone who works for the government and is very interested in public-private partnerships, I think water is a very good space to be solving some of these complex problems with innovative public-private partnerships.
Thank you so much, Mike. You perfectly teed up the next question. So I'm going to talk to the locals first and then the state folks. And the next topic is really about collaboration. So I'm going to talk to Tim and Katie first. Obviously, when you're in local governments, I made a joke about RV parks, but you're balancing a ton of local community needs, whether it's trash pickup or roads or development or any number of things that you're balancing, but also recognizing your responsibility to protect the watershed. What support do you need from the state and from the Fed to help you do a better job of watershed protection?
Funding. You knew that was coming, right? But short of funding, I had mentioned that I was a member of Michigan Water Environment Association, but I'm also a member of the Solid Waste Association in Michigan as well. And there's, if it's full cycle, or full circle, I should say, we need to look at each of those different things and, helping when you can, and, asking the questions when you can't to figure this out helps a lot. And that, I guess those are the other ones that we've worked with. But as an association, working with our regulators to help them see what they're seeing. I didn't know about the chlorides and the ammonia rules, 4 or 5 years ago, but now they're coming with all our stormwater permits. So those are things that you can look on the horizon and start to develop. And rules like that take a long time to develop. We've been working on a collection system one for almost 10 years, and we're getting close, I think. But those are just it's long range planning that's needed for that.
I guess I would just reiterate sort of the collaboration and the private-public partnership aspect of things. I think that that's the only way we've been successful at doing cleanup in Washtenaw County and in the city of Ypsilanti specifically. Like, I think that we've had a project called Dorsey Estates that we just did housing that as we began to excavate, we found additional contamination there, and then it sat for a while because we had to work on getting another grant. And so, like, just making sure that we have access to those different resources. So yes, money, but access and relationship development with those different organizations that can help provide those resources to communities. So so that we can get to that soil out of that spot. It's the same thing that we have with our Water Street site. We absolutely needed to partner with all the different organizations to address those contaminated sites, and the Brownfield Board in Washtenaw County also to make those happen. Without those different resources, our communities wouldn't be able to do these projects, including the removal of the dam, right? Like, all of those different projects need a lot of different players, and I think that collaboration is key to all of it working.
We do have public-private partnerships. Our water treatment systems are monitored or managed by a company. Our compost facilities are managed by another company. Our Safe Built is a company that does all our construction, and then we have the engineering as well. As a city, you can't keep all of those employees set up unless you have multiple public-private partnerships. Good point.
Thank you. All right, next for Mike and Tom, from your sort of zoomed out, looking at the state level or the regional level, do you have strategies you've seen from other places that might work for communities here in the Huron River watershed, things that could, solutions from other places that could support us?
Yes. The work that I do with the Department of Natural Resources with private landowners is entirely federally funded. I don't get any funds from the state. And one of the things that I tell the Forest Service is thank you for the money, but the best thing that they do is bring multiple states together to learn from each other. And so we need to replicate that at the state level as well. This morning I was sitting next to Rebecca and I asked, hey Rebecca, is there an association of watershed councils? Here we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Huron River Watershed Council, doing great work. How many other watershed councils are there in Michigan? And it's probably not going to be a city or a county that's going to be convening, the dozens of watershed councils. So I'm going to go back and ask my friend Julia Kirkwood at EGLE, hey, if you're investing in watershed councils, are you bringing them all together to learn from each other? Because the good things that are happening here in Ann Arbor need to be shared with other cities. It'll be a lot easier to create the Grand Rapids Blue Belt Initiative if they have the blueprint from Ann Arbor. And there's good things happening in other parts of the state that Ann Arbor can replicate. For instance, Huron Pines is a partner that I work with. They're based in Gaylord, but they're a regional conservation organization that covers 13 counties in the whole Northeast Lower Peninsula. And they're doing really good work in the Huron, Lake Huron watershed. And they did a really cool project with the city of Alpena to feature this Forest to My Faucet project. And we worked on a video with the Forest Service to really showcase this project at a statewide and even national scale. And Huron Pines did a really nice job putting together a flyer that was information about how forests impact their drinking water, how land use impacts their drinking water, how land use impacts the cost of treating your drinking water if you get your water from a municipal water utility. They put together a really good flyer that was distributed to 5,000 water utility customers in Alpena. And that's something that I'm trying to get my other partners on Forest to My Faucet to replicate that good idea and to make those types of investments in community and build those types of innovative partnerships.
Well, we don't typically talk about states that are doing things better. So to me, it's less about like who is doing things better and like lessons learned. It is that just different states are approaching things differently. And so Mike has used different words for it. Like when you're talking about some of the finance things, I think about water quality trading, which I'm not advocating for here right now. That's not, but like those principles have been applied all over the country with different, with different pollutants, different issues, and so like, I think Washington did something with like soils to salmon, right? And so they're really focused on soil health and tree cover to shade rivers to lower the temperature. So like there are, you know, so there are like those examples. You know, there are states that are putting a lot of time and effort into water reuse and how do we get better about reusing. There are some states that have really put a lot of effort into farmer-led watershed groups and have had really pretty tremendous success around galvanizing farmers around soil health, around water quality outcomes. And so I think there are opportunities, right, for Michigan and for local units of government in Michigan to kind of learn from some of those other examples. I also think there is, as I look to kind of the future and what to maybe take away from a local lens, you know, talking about the economic return, talking about jobs, like bringing that connection is a really powerful piece when it comes to advocacy, whether it's for funding or for policy. And so would continue to like encourage folks, and I think the Greenbelt's a good example, right? I'm sure you could look at economic value for the region, right? And so continuing to keep that lens as we're looking at launching projects or expanding projects that have already been kicked off in the Huron.
Right, well, we actually are at audience participation time. We're going to move over to that. I would love to hear from the audience, particularly about what opportunities do you see in your community that, you know, might be good solutions. We're on the solutions-oriented side of the day today. And also, was there anything you heard that was exciting, that you didn't know and that you're excited about that is happening here in the Huron River watershed? So I think we've got mics in the audience and would love to see who's got a question.
Hi, thank you all. My question is related to our Greenbelt program. It's funding the preservation of a lot of conventionally farmed land. And I guess I just wonder, is that good for our watershed, or is it a source of contamination, or is it both? And I'm an organic farmer, and we are highly regulated by the state and very aware of all the things we need to do. And just talking to some farmers in our community, it seems like the conventional farmers are not regulated in the same way, and they're managing a lot more land and a lot more acres than we are. And I just, I'm curious about the programs you were talking about to help conventional farmers.
Do you want to start with that, Tom? Can I throw it to you?
I don't know if you had anything. You talked a lot about the Greenbelt, so if there was anything, I will hit on it, but.
I'm going to let you, Tom, handle agriculture.
Pass. Talk to Ed. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I am not. I will preface with I'm not familiar with like how the preservation program works within the Greenbelt Bluebelt program, and like if there are what the requirements are or aren't for that. I will say that how we address agricultural nutrient issues is a pervasive problem, right, across the region, across the state, across the country. I think it's a good question, right, for locals, right, and for like the people that are administering the Greenbelt and Bluebelt program on like, do we have kind of a litmus test or a measuring stick on what we are preserving? And that may be something that at a local level there is more of an interest or a different interest in kind of differentiating between different farming operations.
I'm willing to say one thing, I guess. Has anyone paid attention to the local news about how EGLE has just settled a lawsuit that Farm Bureau brought against the government and its ability to regulate concentrated animal feeding operations. In 2020, EGLE published rules to be more restrictive on spreading manure. And because clearly agriculture, as well as humans, both urban and rural, are major sources of E. coli. We learned about E. coli this morning. And Farm Bureau sued when EGLE tried to prevent spreading manure in the winter and tried to publish a rule that said you have to have a permanent vegetated buffer of 35 feet. You can't be spreading manure right into the drain. And Farm Bureau sued, and thankfully EGLE prevailed recently, and I believe the director just published some rules that, 5 years later will start to be enforced upon agriculture. And as someone who likes clean drinking water, I would suggest that is a good regulation, that we don't want to be exempting agriculture from every environmental law. We need everyone to contribute to better land management. As a forester, I will acknowledge that we need to manage forests better. We've learned a lot in the last 125 years of professional forestry, but we still have a lot to learn about managing forests better. And agriculture needs to contribute to healthier practices that protect clean air and clean water. If the Huron River watershed is 41% urban, I think it was Dan this morning that said we need less lawns. So I would encourage all of you to go home and light your lawnmower on fire, and convert your lawn to native habitat that's going to have ecological and water quality benefits. I think it's the Homegrown National Park is this initiative that's trying to get people to quit mowing your stupid lawn. And especially if we're going to talk about the Huron River, quit mowing your stupid lawn right up to the edge of the river or the edge of the lake. My parents lived on a lake for 50 years, and I couldn't get my own dad to stop mowing the lawn up to the edge of the lake. And we've got to change our practices, whether we are in forestry or agriculture, urban development, or a residential homeowner. We all need to change our practices and do a little something to make the world a little better.
Thank you. Other questions?
This is a comment mostly for Tom. You're talking about other states that are doing interesting things. One state that I've been most surprised about is I attended a conference last year in Florida, and it was the Environmental Permitting Summer School. Sounds terrible. And then I think if we were to hold that in Michigan, we get 50 people that thought that's probably their job to be there. There was 1,500 people there. It was developers, it was the regulators, it was the conservation groups. They were all there at the table, and they just really wanted to know, what do we do? How do we comply? I don't see that attitude in Michigan. I see there's a big separation between those two, and the challenger question is, how do we bring those developers into that and really open up these conversations? In Florida, go visit, go to the Environmental Permitting Summer School, and I think you'll be surprised.
Is that a question?
Give him a second.
There's a lot there, Ed. That's Ed, by the way. So kind of how do we bring developers better to the table? Okay. That is another very good question. I think to your point on kind of the divide between Michigan and some other states, we really benefit from, we have so many things in-house within EGLE from a permitting standpoint, whereas so many other states have to go through the Army Corps almost exclusively. And so that means that, their permitting times are many, many months, where ours are, 30 to 60 days, right? And so I think that in itself can be attractive to development. I think part of the job for us too is also communicating with developers about the value of having that state-run program and drawing that contrast between Michigan and other states. I think for the most part we have a pretty good relationship between state agencies and the business community when it comes to permitting. I think in large part because of the fact that we have those so many of those permits in-house. Gillian probably sees that more on a day-to-day.
I want to go to summer school, actually. That sounds fun. I would just add, I think that one of the challenges that we have with developers is that Michigan is very wet. We have a ton of wetlands in this state, and we know from our land use maps how vital those wetlands are to water quality. And I think that just reinforces the importance of why brownfield development is so important. Let's get people building on the existing disinvested, the places that have already been developed, instead of building on new wetlands. That's just my soapbox. You want to jump in, Tim?
Yeah, no, I agree. We had that opportunity in Wixom in 2007. The Ford Motor Plant closed its doors in Wixom, and we had 300 acres of land, basically private land, obviously, that needed to be redeveloped. And it quickly, 2009, thank goodness for the increase in metals. They cleared out the whole place and took out all the metal and took out all of the concrete all at once. And somebody made a lot there. And the trouble was they left all the basements in that whole place. So in 2018 couldn't have happened any better. They wanted to remediate all of those basements. With one of them was the basement for their phosphating vault, and multiple different areas of potential contamination. Now they remediated it initially, but all that rainwater was still stuck in all those basements. So resample, PFAS was there, pretreatment systems in place, and slowly each one of those was remediated. And once it was cleared land, development happens then. And the brownfields was a major part of that with the county. So it helped us a lot.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Thanks, Ed.
Ed, we can go on about this for a long time, but it will stop.
Hi, I'm interested in the Blue Belt. I'm on the board of the Ann Arbor Trout Unlimited, and we're always working on buffer zones and trying to improve the quality of the water in Mill Creek, partly because it's semi-cold, but we care for all the fish, not just the trout. And I'm wondering, because we often have discussions with landowners that exceed their interest, really. This Blue Belt program, will it just offer funding, or will it also require that the landowners change their practices, whether they're farmers or residents?
I had a little trouble hearing, but I am wondering if this is a question about kind of how the Forest to Faucet program works with individual landowners to support them. Is that right?
I think I got it.
Okay, you got it.
There were some specific questions about the green belt and the blue belt that it looks like other folks in the room know better than I do. My understanding is that both programs are about land preservation. So it's either purchasing land or purchasing a conservation easement. I'm not aware of investing in other practices that protect water quality. It's possible that it does, but the good news is I could give you a very long list of alphabet soup of government programs that do provide funding to landowners to plant trees and to protect the riparian zone. Your local Natural Resources Conservation Office, when the government opens back up again, has a lot of funding for tree planting in riparian zones. I got some funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, where the Michigan Forest Association has $8 million, and they've created a forest and water fund where they are investing in 4 different practices for climate resilience and water quality. They are paying for tree planting. And then the third thing that folks should know about, here in Ann Arbor, the drain commissioner You guys don't call it a drain commissioner in Washtenaw County, but my understanding is that the drain commissioner has some funding from MDARD and is doing some really innovative work to buy permanent conservation easements along agricultural drains in Washtenaw County, requiring a permanent vegetative buffer along county agricultural drains. And I think that's a huge win that Washtenaw County should celebrate, and again, that other counties should be replicating, because drain commissioners historically have been about, land use change to drain those pesky wetlands, get rid of the trees and drain all that water and turn it into highly productive agricultural soils. That's what drain commissioners historically have done. But here in Washtenaw County, my understanding is that whatever you call your drain commissioner is doing some pretty cool, innovative work and helping farmers to, provide that riparian buffer that we need to protect water quality. So there's a lot of help out there for both agricultural and forest landowners to get some financial assistance to plant trees and shrubs and other vegetation.
Thanks for calling that out. I think there is one of the barriers, I think, to collaboration is just that there are so many different programs that are in so many different places, it's really hard to know what they are. So I'm grateful to Watershed Councils and to our drain commissioners. I saw Washtenaw County Water Resource Commissioner Gretchen Driscoll in the room earlier, but I don't know if she's here. I see Jim Nash from Oakland County here. Thanks for being here, Jim. So those are the folks who I think have a lot of those resources and are able to help our local communities. I believe now that we are at time, so I just want to say thank you so much to each one of our panelists. I hope that folks in the audience heard some interesting things, some hopeful things of how these things don't always happen fast, but they do happen. And so I'm so grateful to all of you for your work making the Huron River better. And so thank you so much. Please stick around and we can chat later. Thanks.